What if sharing your fundamental truths could be the timeliness of your legacy? I'd like to welcome Ken Miller to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely day. Welcome, Ken.
Welcome, and thank you for inviting me onto the podcast, Angelina.
It is my pleasure, and I will just hold up your book for a moment. You were gracious enough to be able to send it over. I did read it, and I think we're going to have a very deep conversation about the content of the book, but also you're going to share your story, and I think it's going to set some people free and um, do a lot of great things in terms of what you had spoken about, not just being able to articulate your feelings so that other people can have words for them, but also just bringing to light that some of the experiences that you have gone through that some people keep tucked away, whether it's due to shame or they're a very private person, and especially if someone's affluent. They don't like to show their face in society for a variety of reasons, but then they have this added pressure and scrutiny. And I know that you have set yourself free and you're very comfortable with who you are. So we're going to start with the challenges and then we're going to move over to the remedy in the next hour or so. So where would you like to start us out today, Ken?
Well, we can, I always like to start with, if I possibly can, depends on who I'm speaking with. I want people to first understand where I'm at today. Who am I today? The book is called Becoming Ken, and it's a story of me becoming who I am today. I am, and this is the way I identify, I am a kind and gentle man. That's who I am. I'm a child of God, but I'm kind and gentle in my dealings with others. I harbor no resentment. I harbor no anger. I harbor I harbor no ill will toward any individual or toward any individual from the past. We could talk maybe a little bit later about resentment. I have very little, if none, fear. I have very little fear.
All right.
And so that's who I am today. So
You're at
when we
peace.
talk
You're at
about,
peace
yeah,
today.
oh, very much. I'm comfortable in my own skin. That's the way. And this is another term I love to use. I'm not in an adversarial relationship with self. I'm not. Because I used to have
Mm.
like two pieces of me, two people. We have that old show where you have the devil on one side and the angel on the other side. Well, you could say that's just an example of it, but I'm not in that adversarial relationship. I just try to align myself with that which is positive and that which is right.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's where I'm at today.
I think one of the things that has happened in the last so many years is that you have found healing, and you'll speak
Mhm,
into that in a moment regarding
mhm.
how and the details. But let me go to the challenges first. So
Okay.
you are a Dartmouth graduate and
Mhm,
very, very bright, as I shared in the preamble.
mhm,
But you had perhaps a chaotic childhood. There was instability. Then you got to deal with addiction, homelessness.
mhm.
So what are your words for it? Because I want to dive into the, that aspect of it and then transition over to all the lessons that you've learned to now where you're in a place where you can intentionally design a legacy.
Okay, so let's talk about what are the antecedents. What are the events or experiences that brought me to the point where we'll get to the homelessness and the incarceration. So I was born in 1962. My mother was a white teenage runaway teenager, and my father was a black married pimp and drug dealer in New York City. He impregnated my mother and she put me up for adoption at birth. It's a mixed child, 17 years old. It was not happening in 62. And I went through 6 years of foster homes. That in itself is traumatic because there is a sense of not being wanted. I knew that at age 4. I knew I did not have a mother, and I knew that, quote unquote, I was thrown away and or unwanted as a 4-year-old child. I was adopted at age 6 by Irene and Sam Miller. And this is another important part. When I was adopted, I could not read, I could not write, I could not tell time, I could not even tie my shoes. And I'm in first grade because the foster system was not engaged with me as a child to teach me those things. It's something that parents will teach a child. So my mother taught me how to read the first summer of my adoption, little phonetic 3 by 5 cards, TH, PH. I fell in love with reading. By the second grade, I was reading at the sixth grade level. I was what they call precocious. By the time I was 17, I was a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard. I went to Dartmouth, and I went there damaged. It's real important. I'm 17 years old going off to college, Ivy League, but I'm damaged. I'm damaged due to the adoption. I'm damaged due to the feeling of not being wanted. I am really damaged because my father was a violent alcoholic. He
Yeah, so
was
let me
late.
interrupt you
Yeah,
for a
no
moment, if I
problem.
could be.
No
Okay.
problem.
So what I found so interesting is that your foster mother, is that what I should call her?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
you can call it my mother.
She
Oh,
loved you so deeply through thick and thin.
mhm,
And even the
mhm.
story of her investing in you as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, etc., to have that vertical learning curve. Because, like I shared with you in the preamble, you have a bright mind and an amazing vocabulary.
Okay. Yeah, she did. It was, you know what the term we use is unconditional love.
Okay.
And what that means is no matter what state, whether I'm homeless, whether I'm a full-blown drug addict, whether I'm incarcerated for years, my mother still loved me.
I thought she
And
was your
that's
angel.
what, was she what?
I thought she was your angel.
She was.
Okay,
She,
keep going. Keep going.
yeah, she was my angel.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and let me put it this way, without her, I don't even want to think, first of all, I probably wouldn't be here. And in fact, what do you mean? I probably would. I know I wouldn't be here because part of one of the stories I have is that there was a point where I was going to commit suicide. I was going to jump off the Spokane Falls Bridge in Spokane, Washington, if she did not take my call. I call her with the last collect call or whatever it may be from the payphone. She says, Kenneth, I already know something is wrong. I have a treatment center for you. I didn't even get a chance to really say anything. I just
Hmm.
wanted her to answer the phone call. I didn't know she had already, did some things that were going to keep me alive so that I can be on this call today. And that was 20, 30 years ago.
Hmm.
So yeah, she was an angel, but she was just a manifestation of all that is good in this world. And to this day is one of the finest people. And we say that a lot about our moms, but she really is. And I've talked to a lot of other people. My mom has passed away since, but I've talked to a lot of other people who have known her, and she said, Your mother was one of the nicest ladies ever,
So
ever.
one of the things that I was
Yeah.
curious about, and we do have a list of
Mhm.
questions that we're going to
Yeah.
move through. Yeah, but one of the things I wondered about is for so before age 5, that's like the age of
Mhm.
when one is imprinted, and then about age 7 is the age of reasoning. And I
Yeah.
wondered if you had felt hopeless by age 7. I know you used the word damaged. I wondered because by age 7, one can know the difference between life and death, right and wrong. I just wondered if you felt like there was no hope and there was no choice but to survive, or if things shifted at age 6 because of this new foster home.
Well, they shifted.
Okay.
Only thing that I wanted at age 6, because it's a legal proceeding to be adopted in the state of New York, and it's done
Hmm.
at the state level. All I wanted was someone to call mother. That's all I wanted. I didn't care about a father, dad, or anything. I just wanted someone to call mother.
Because that nurturing.
I, I don't know, as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, this is what you want. And
Okay.
that's what I wanted.
Okay.
And she could have been an ogre, and I still would have done the adoption because there were already signs that my father was going to be difficult. Yeah.
Okay. So what's interesting is in foster care, I've been told it either can go one way or the other.
it it doesn't. I'm not that I'm disagreeing, but this is just my experience. It's
Okay.
not that it can go one way or the other. It's just that you spend so much time with so many different foster parents.
Okay.
So I had a lot of them. I can remember some. I have stories about certain ones. The first story in the book, one of the earliest stories I sometimes speak from the stage, is that we were in Long Island, New York, me and who I thought was my brother, Jacob. We're same age. And I remember we went into the split level home, and there was the foster, it was a foster, but the adoption woman. She drove a like a 65 Mustang. This is 1967-ish and 66, 67. I'm 4 or 5 years old. And I remember all the my sisters, who I thought were my sisters, because I didn't know at that point I was adopted. I thought they're all crying in the living room. I'm like, why are everybody crying? And then this, the adoption lady takes the two of us to take to our first foster home that I can remember.
Hmm.
And I just remember everybody being so sad. And I was like, wow. And then you do that 10, 15 times. It creates, a sense of not belonging. Because I understood. I didn't know it was called adoption or foster system or foster child, but I realized that I did not have a mom. I did not have someone I can call mother. Okay, I just had these women and men. And, I mean, it's always a couple. At least all the ones I remember were couples, white, black, but all couples,
Hmm.
and they would get paid to take the foster kids in, foster
Hmm.
children.
Yeah, it's like a point of connection, like whether it's called roots, but I think it's more so it's connection. Like instead of being like a floating helium balloon, it was where do I get to connect compared to shifting? Because I think in terms of stability, children need stability.
Yes, yes, they need stability, and they need a sense of safety.
Hmm.
And I didn't have that early on because of some of the violence. But I didn't understand it. I just didn't understand it. Why is this gentleman so angry at me? What did I do? I'm
Yeah.
6, 7. So, but again, that's going more into my father. But this is another important part. Another one of my issues of like trauma or adverse effect was I thought I had a brother named Jacob. I thought that was my brother because we went together all
Yeah,
these
I
fall.
remember. I remember in the chapters,
Yeah.
yes, early on.
And Jacob was special needs. I didn't know that at the time. But he flunked kindergarten. I remember that. I go to first grade. He's still like in kindergarten. I'm
And
like, that's a little weird.
he was your buddy.
He was my brother. But when it came time to make a choice between having a mother or staying with my who I thought was my brother, I abandoned him and left him. And there was a sense of abandonment. To this day, I've been trying to find him for 40, 50 years. I've been trying to find him, and I can't. Just can't.
Hmm. I think one
And
of the
one
things
day I
that,
will.
yeah, I think one of the things you're pointing to is the number of tough decisions that you had to make that were like you had said, like above your pay grade, because when you're a child, you didn't understand why was your foster father so angry. And probably today you know that that's misdirected anger, but like you had said, and I think you kind of spoke about this in the book, but as a child, he was like a giant to you. So I
Yeah.
think he was a veteran and he had some PTSD
Hmm.
probably, and then alcohol did not help him. And so he had you there holding like a gigantic chainsaw and you're like 8 years old or whatever, and you're like terrified out of your mind. And I just thought, okay, well, that was your male role model. And that's like introduction, welcome here. And so how could you forget? You'd have to almost process his stuff before you could even get home to find yourself again, which, like you had said, is a kind, peaceful man who's gentle. It's
Yeah.
not one to give chainsaws to little children.
Right. Right. And then the thing is, again, you don't understand. I just didn't understand because I wanted to be his friend. I literally wanted a father.
You wanted him to
We would,
like you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did. And
Yeah.
so I would do different things. There's a story in the book. When I pick up my second felony, I call him because he's a convicted felon because he
I know. I
shot.
remember that in the book. Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I did it, Dad. We're cool now. I'm going to prison too. And he's like, he that did not resonate with him positively whatsoever.
Well, he thought you
And
had wasted your life, which is very interesting because his demons were his demons.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and he didn't like himself. So if you come along and you're like, "Hey, let's be friends," he already hates himself enough. I mean, he's drowning and numbing out and
self-pity.
escaping whatever it is that was his thing,
Hmm.
his
Yeah,
memories. Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up because obviously your story is unique, but like you had shared, you speak on stages because
Hmm.
there's also a universality to your experiences to let other
Hmm.
people know that they're not alone. So I had done some research, as I had shared with you in the preamble before today's conversation, and when a child is abused, and it doesn't matter if it's physical or sexual, sometimes the mind can split. And what ends up happening is they move away from that experience, almost like they're looking at a movie in order to survive that trauma or the years of trauma. So I almost wondered, as one of the questions that's not on the list, is did you ever like pull back or lean out and then think to yourself, it's just like a movie with, and I think your step or foster dad's name was Sam. So was it just like a movie? Was it in the moment and then years later you could process it, but did you have to just like detach and disassociate?
You could say that. A big part of mine again was trying to understand. So what you talked about it, there was displacement. So what I did is I took all that anger that I had toward my father and I manifested it in bad behavior in school as in elementary school.
And I
And
wondered if you were
uh,
self-sabotaging.
nah, that came later. That came.
Okay.
It's like I don't even think you can articulate. At least I don't. At least in
Or maybe
my,
you just had to get the energy out of your body.
I had to get the anger out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up going to a psychiatrist. I don't know if it's in the book or not, but I went to a psychiatrist. I had such bad behavior, but academically I'm doing phenomenal. But
Like you
such
have a bright
bad
mind.
behavior that they took me to a psychiatrist. Now, you can understand this is not common in 1970, 72, a black child going to a psychiatrist. Most people can afford that, let alone would utilize that. My mom and my dad, and I'll never forget, we go there and as a group, the three of us, then I go in there and talk to the psychiatrist alone. And I didn't know this until later, years later. She said, my mom always called me Kenneth.
Hmm.
Kenneth, what he said was, you're so angry at your father. And so they told this to my mom and dad. My dad didn't want to hear that. He did
Hmm.
not want to hear that. And so that was the last time I went to that. And sometimes I wonder if I had more help psychologically, emotionally at a younger age, I may have not done the things that I ended up doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know, but it didn't. It didn't work out that way. So anyway, a lot of misplaced anger. And the word that the feeling is anger, but it's really fear. It's fear.
Correct.
Because let me just say this one other thing, because other people are going to have the same thing. We don't understand why someone does the actions that they do toward us. But a lot of the difficulty is it's not, again, we're just a vessel.
Hmm.
We're a vessel for this misplaced anger, this misplaced feeling of not belonging, this misplaced feeling of low self-esteem and or value. Okay. And my father had a lot of reasons why. I understand, to me at least, I understand all of his anger. I understand it. I
Hmm.
understand it as a black man growing up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s with a wife that makes more money than him. And again, that's a highest rate of divorce is
It's over money.
black couples where the woman makes more money than black men. I'm serious.
Hmm.
I read that. I couldn't believe it. I was like,
Hmm.
Dad, that's my dad. Because she's got a master's and working on her doctorate, and you barely got out of high school.
Hmm.
Okay, so
So he feels like a
because all
failure.
that, as a black man, I'm supposed to be the leader of the home. And
Hmm.
I've been ostracized and I've been emasculated by quote unquote society and the military, da 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 da. And so, and then the other thing is he had two children from a former marriage. So he's done the kid thing.
Hmm.
And what I did, and this is the main one, because you understand, until my father shot my mother, he
Hmm.
never laid a hand on my mother, not one time. Okay, this is real important. It was
Hmm.
always at me. I mean, police are called, all that stuff. We had to leave, move. It's in the book. I
Hmm.
10, 15 times. We had to go to motels or hide out. My senior year of high school, I hid out the last 3 to 4 months.
I remember
Hid.
reading that because of
Yes. I
fear,
mean,
because he
it's
was like a giant to
terrible.
you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The fear was so palpable with my father to me. Physical fear was so thick. I'd say you can cut it with a knife. And people have experienced that also. But the key thing is, and this is, we'll talk more about this, but I've forgiven him.
You
Because
did.
number one, I understand. And number two, I sat down and we talked. We talked as two men. And plus, the fear, the physical fear is gone.
Mhm.
By that point, by the time he had got out of prison, and he was just an old guy, and he
Correct.
had drank in all those
Yeah.
years.
And one of the things that I had to wrap my mind around is understanding like, well, why did you keep, I mean, this is the words that I would use.
Yeah.
Why does Kenneth keep self-sabotaging when he's got such a bright mind? And perhaps the answer is what they call repetitive compulsion. You know, your stepdad Sam was the man in your life. And that was who you identified with, even if that's not what you wanted to identify with regarding his negative behavior. And you had no place to go as a child. You know, it's you had nothing. You know, children, it's sometimes they are the most abused. And so, like you had said, you hit out and then it trails you to college because it's not like you can just wipe it clean, in blank slate
Oh,
technology or something.
I was really damaged in God. So I went to Dartmouth, fantastic school,
Hmm.
fantastic school. And, but what happened is I started drinking to belong. And people said, why did you start drinking? Because that's what you do in college. You drink. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody. So it's not like I was unusual. The last thing I want to do is become an alcoholic. But I got an example for, 10 years of my dad. Last
Hmm.
thing I want to do. But within a month and a half of my first drink, I'm a full-blown alcoholic. And very simple, what that means is I cannot control with any certainty the amount that I drink. And then when I drink a lot, I make really bad decisions because my
Hmm.
perception of reality is
Hmm.
skewed. So, and then like again, I came in with all of this fear, even though my father's 3,000 miles away, but I'm damaged. I'm damaged. Plus, I just didn't have a sense of who I was. I was a weird, in a way, I was a weird kid. Just a weird, I'm just,
I don't know if you had even a chance to develop emotionally without that outside influence. And I think later on in life, then you did find your way home in terms of finding your way back to self. But
oh,
how,
for sure.
yeah.
So what do we do? What we do at that age, and this is a lot of high school, junior high, college, is we try to identify who are we? What are we? Who are we going to associate with? How are we going to identify? How are we going to self identify? Okay. So you've got to understand, I go there and I don't know. Am I going to associate with the blacks? Am I going to associate? Because I grew up in Anchorage. I grew up in
Yeah.
upstate New York. There's only three black families in the whole area. I was the only black male in my school. So I didn't come from a black culture, quote
Hmm.
unquote. My parents, my adopted parents were black. But so and then I go to Anchorage and I love heavy metal music. I go to
Hmm.
Dartmouth, I got a jacket that has Van Halen, Black Sabbath, Ted Nugent on the jacket. And I'm wearing a Jerry curl. Jerry curls had gone out 2 years before, but I didn't know that. So I'm just this weird guy from Alaska, and nobody knew. I felt so out of place. And so people didn't know what to really do with me, and I didn't know. I just wanted to belong. So, like you said earlier, one thing, I was very good at putting on a mask. And so you would feel comfortable in my presence. I had never seen a prep in my life. I didn't know what a prep was till I went to Dartmouth. And that's a world. That's a world. Topsiders, polos, Fair Isle sweaters. I'd never seen that. And I remember being so angry at that group of people, which is insane. But I hated preps. Why? Because they looked like they had it all together.
I,
They
I
had,
remember,
and it's not true. It's not
yeah.
true, but I didn't know that at that time.
Yeah, I just want to interrupt for a moment and then I want to be very sensitive to you being able to tell your story. And so
No,
I have
no,
to
no,
zip
no,
it
no,
and I
no,
have to
no.
remember to zip it. Okay. But I remember you talking about that in the chapter in the book, like the way that they dressed. And then there was this class system. And again, I thought later on in the book you identified with more so the black culture, but yet you grew up in a white neighborhood in Alaska, etc. And so I thought, well, Kamala Harris identifies with the black culture. So it's kind of like that middle of the road, and which is very interesting also that that's also an experience that you have to work through. Like when they talk about Barack Obama, like he went to Harvard, and
Mhm.
he knows, he also has a very good vocabulary, whether or not you like his politics or not. But I remember you speaking about the class structure, that you went there and there were the families that had the big names like Vanderbilt, et cetera, at Dartmouth. And then
Rockefeller.
also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Rockefeller was one of them.
Rockefeller even,
Yeah.
sure, sure.
Mhm.
And you described the families, and they would come on the weekends, and they were part of like sailing clubs, and they had their own culture. And then you
Mhm.
felt like an outlier, again, on the outside looking in, wondering, well, my parents aren't here, but they can't come. And I'm wondering, yeah, yeah. So I think, but please continue for a moment.
Yeah, that so you put on these masks. So because we're gonna take it to the brass tacks. My greatest fear is that I would die alone. That's my greatest fear. It's been my fear since 4 years old. Is my greatest fear is that I would die alone, and that's the core issue for me. Okay, probably is till this day, but it's not a great fear anymore. I understand that so much more. So to not die alone, I need for people to like me. So a couple things that does that are inimical to your well-being. Number one, it makes it real difficult to say no. Because if I say no, they may not like me. Okay. This group of people. Number two, you have to spend a lot of time and energy playing the role. Is the role that I'm a white prep in the fraternity, or is the role that I'm cool and down on the streets? Where am I at? Or that I'm good on the basketball court and hanging out with the guys. Okay.
Hmm.
What role? But now I gotta put that mask on. And
Hmm.
then because you're running around, you're always afraid that somebody's gonna see through the mask, the
Yeah.
visage. Mhm.
And I do want to add that in college, most other students are not going to be mature enough. If you were to say, hi, these are my bag of experiences, they're not going to be able to look back at you and say, well, we understand, because they're not even developed that much, or they're not going to be as developed emotionally because they're just finding their way. But yeah, I thought that that piece about, if you go back to the foster care system, and felt like, you didn't belong there, and now you're going to want to belong to something. And then, like you said, how much do you compromise? And then to then walk into bear traps, and you didn't even know the bear traps of the world yet, even though you've come out the other side, which is a miracle.
Yeah. You're constantly if you're constantly saying to yourself, if they find out, and what are the repercussions if they find out? They're going to ostracize me. They're going to remove me from the group. I will be alone again.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say,
No, come
but
on.
if they find out that you're not perfect, because I felt like in your writing this book, you're
Mhm.
willing to stand alone and say, I'm not perfect. And I thought that was the bravest part.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we use a term, and I don't. So one of the things I hate are cliches because I think they're an excuse for lazy thinking. And when I do my mentoring with men, I always talk about don't use a cliche. Think about it and define it, or give me your truth. And so, one of the key things that I've always want is because there's a saying that I was thinking about when we were talking, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to use that saying because it's too common, it's too trite. Okay. And again, one of the key components of it, literally in this college age, is that there's so many things that we're trying to come to grips with, in that environment. This happens that's one of the reasons I love, and I would continue to love to talk to college age students because I've been there and I understand the dynamics of trying to understand your role in the present and also the role or direction or path that you want to take as you leave college and go into what we call the quote unquote the working or adult world. And so there was so many struggles. And then, without getting maybe too much into it, but you also have the struggle with sexuality. And for me, I had to struggle with that because I had some situations or incidents, which are I believe in the book, that had me questioning my sexuality. And plus, I'm 17 and it wasn't cool to be in college and be a virgin. I was a virgin. And I was like, and I knew that. And some people knew that, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like embarrassing, I'm this
Well,
good
I
looking
think you had
black
your,
guy.
yeah, I think you had your foster mother to speak to.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I don't think you were going to be talking with her about that
no,
though.
no,
Yeah.
no, but my mom was so cool. She did do this one time because I would come back, I wouldn't have any girlfriends. I wouldn't, I didn't have these girlfriends and I wasn't dating or anything like that. I was just so messed up when I would come home for the summers. And she said to me one day, she said, Kenneth, you're not going to find me. And I'm like, what? She said, Kenneth, you're not going to find me. And she was right. I'm looking for my mom. I'm looking for someone that danced on Broadway, was in two movies, dated Harry Belafonte, has working on a PhD, poet laureate, all these things, super talented, sang, had a record album, played guitar, wrote poetry. I mean, we're talking about beautiful, kind, gentle. And I'm looking for someone like her. But not my mom, but I'm looking for someone. You're not gonna find me. And I was like, why? And it's not of ego. She was saying that. She was like, Ken, go out there and, and date and be with someone, be happy with someone, but don't keep your standards so high
Hmm.
or try to find me.
Hmm.
It took my mom 50 years to get all these things, and I'm looking for somebody 19 with all these qualities and or accoutrements of success.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad she voiced that because every person has their own fingerprints, their own DNA, and if you set that bar so high, you would miss that opportunity to just be 18 or just be 19 because she was, by that age of her, she's going to master those different areas because she's got TI time in to get to know herself, to fall down 13 times, get herself back up again, become refined, all those things. Let me bring up a couple of other real
Yeah,
touchy subjects because again,
no problem.
I want it to shed some light, like you had said, honesty sets other people free, and
Uh,
also to take away the power of the secret because people
mhm.
carry some things around. You also talked about not just like identity crisis, self-worth issues, societal marginalization, survivor's guilt, internal pressure, perhaps the fight for redemption, re-entry, reconnection. Would you like to speak about any of those other things?
Let's talk about guilt. That's always
Please.
good. I like to talk about guilt and then also talk about the power of the secrets.
Okay.
Guilt. My greatest guilt was right after my mom got shot
Okay.
because I could have took the gun. I could have took the gun 2 days before.
Hmm.
I went over there with my brother, my half brother, who's older, great guy named Mike. And we go over there. My father is drunk on the couch,
Hmm.
and we see the gun, and we're going to take the gun. And he
Hmm.
said, "No, I just need it. It's not loaded. I just use it to scare off potential burglars." And so we said, "Okay." 2 days later, he went to my mom's job, shot her, and while he's shooting her, he told her he was going to shoot me. He's going to come to
Hmm.
my job and shoot me, and hit her 5 times.
And God
And
protected you again. He didn't shoot you.
yeah, but let's go back to the guilt part.
Okay.
I am so messed up
Well, you're blaming,
that
you were kicking yourself.
yeah, but you gotta let me explain how damaged I am. So my only way to deal with trauma is to not show emotion. That's how I dealt with it. I would internalize it, but I would not show or manifest any emotion.
Hmm.
So I get a call from my mother's secretary, Irene's been shot, Irene's been shot. I go to my boss and
Hmm.
say, hey, do you mind if I take a little time off? My mom's been shot. She's in the hospital. And of
Hmm.
course, he freaks out. Of course, because he knows a little bit about my background story.
Hmm.
He freaks out. I go to the hospital. There's pre-op. There's a sheet over with the blood coming through the sheet from the bullet wounds. And my mother is so happy that I'm alive because remember, last thing she hears from him is that he's coming over to shoot that SOB Ken.
Hmm.
I have no emotion.
Hmm.
What can I do, mother? Okay. I remember I took her purse and I took her shoes. And then she went in to be operated on the 5 bullets that she's got in her. I go back to work like nothing happened. That is not the correct way to deal with trauma. It isn't. I should have shared it with others. I should have started planning on what I need to do because years later, I'm in treatment with a family, and my mother said it hurt her tremendously because she thought I didn't care. It's not that I didn't care. That's the only way I could deal with that amount of trauma is by showing no emotion and internalizing and moving on like nothing happened.
Yeah, they
So
say sometimes trauma is that you have like no power or control of that moment. And I could imagine that you felt like, oh yeah, I just lost complete power and control of the situation because someone that you cared about so deeply and loved was such an influence of your life, basically could just get ripped apart that moment. The other thing I wanted to ask
mhm,
at one point, and you've been in sobriety, so I think I can ask this. I know one of the things you talked about is how numb drugs can make a person, and
mhm,
I almost wondered if you would speak into how some people think that they are still in control, even if the drugs could be controlling them. But you can speak about that after the guilt piece if you'd like.
sure. So so the guilt part.
Hmm.
So we go on, and for years I harbored, I should have took the gun. I should have took the gun. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's not the alcohol in my father with 60 years of anger's fault. It's my fault.
Hmm.
Okay. First of all, there's an ego involved and a hubris involved that I'm God and I'm God and therefore it's my fault because I
Hmm.
control the environment. I control my father, I control my mom being there, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Okay. And I don't. I don't. Okay. And what had to happen is at some point I had to come to grips with who I was at that time and forgive myself and not forgive myself because I didn't take the gun. It wasn't my job to take the gun. What my father did was in place in
Yeah.
his brain, whatever that morning, 2 minutes before he got in the car, 2 days before, a week before, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But
Hmm.
that's already in place.
Hmm.
What I do need to do is forgive myself for what I didn't do. Okay. And I do. I just know, hey, it wasn't on me. It's all right, Ken.
I'm
And
glad
you
that
did
you're
the
making that
best you can.
distinction. Hmm.
Yeah. That you could at that time. So again, what I always look at, what are the triggers, the emotional? So when I talk about recovery, a lot of times when I'm working with guys and talking to them about staying clean and sober, I talk about ETEs, emotional trigger events.
Hmm.
What makes a drug is that it changes your perception of reality, whether it's aspirin or methamphetamines or acid. It changes your perception of reality. The reality is, I have a pain in my knee.
Hmm.
I take a drug, aspirin, and I've changed my perception of the reality of pain in my knee.
Okay.
A drug. Okay.
Hmm.
So we've defined for our purposes what a drug is, legal
Okay.
or illegal. And I tell people, they would say, what's your drug of choice or what are you addicted to?
Hmm.
Tell people I'm addicted to leaving reality.
Ooh, that's the
That's
treatable
what
X
I'm
moment right
addicted
there.
to. I
Yeah.
just have different ways of traveling. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. So for me, I can't do any of them. Because again, anything that takes me out of reality
Hmm.
and makes me, and this is the truth, it makes me insane.
At least you can be honest about that.
Yeah, well, why? Because it's truth. What's insanity? What is the definition of insanity?
Sure, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I really liked what you had said about escaping reality. And I would also, if I could be so bold, I would also add to that. But if you were to say, well, welcome to this reality, would you really want this reality? Because you'd have to work through your stuff. And I also believe that it's not just your stuff. You're having to work through Sam's stuff, who was the foster father. even if that wasn't your stuff.
You can say I could work through it. Yeah, yeah. Let's say I did work
Well,
through
because
it.
in the
I had
domino,
to, yeah,
but
well, let me just say, because I had to go in here. I talk all the time about walking through doors.
yeah.
There's a great book called The Memory Chalet. And in that book, or part of that, the way I have made a metaphor of that term is that there is a house that has doors, and you walk down the hall, you go up to the second floor, and with all these doors, and they are doors that have written on there, beaten at age 8,
Hmm.
written on there, sexual impropriety at age 22,
Hmm.
written on there, infidelity, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a door.
Hmm.
We look at the door, and do we have the courage to go into the door, go into the room, but more importantly, turn on the lights
Yeah.
and observe what is in there? Well, I had to do that for my father. I had to go into his door, or my perception of his door, and look at what was in there. World War II, depression, black man, at lower white collar, or actually physical. He was a service rep for Volkswagen. He did service. He was service manager for Volkswagen,
Okay.
but it's,
Okay.
it's manual labor. Okay, and all those things are in his room. Look at them, observe them, and try to get the best understanding as to his why. And because his manifestation of his why predominantly was self-pity. That's what it was.
Oh,
Some people are angry alcoholics. Some people are self-pitying. Some people are happy alcoholics. I've seen hundreds and not thousands of drug addicts and alcoholics. And underlying most, some people are depressed. If there's a core emotion that especially manifests itself under the influence of the drug.
mhm.
Okay. So,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. One of and again, sometimes I don't know where to start regarding questions to a guest. And so, I'm writing to you about like, I had wondered if like, if Sam as the foster father had, one vibration as a tuning fork and literally you're like that smaller tuning fork because he's going to have like the electromagnetic force field of like the planet Jupiter. And then here you are as like a young soul easily, imprintable and to influence. And so like you had just said, it's like yeah, I wondered because some of this, this is my own opinion. Some of this is like, yes, it is your journey, but then some of it, I wonder if there's a larger societal piece, like of macro events. Like one of the things I wrote to you about is if every 3 generation there's a war, and then what happens then as it rolls downhill. If one family goes to World War II and then they come home, and then there's not the skills available inside of the home to deal with those emotional issues that present themselves. And then the children have to deal with it if dad's got PTSD. And then how do they continue the pattern or do they have the courage to break the pattern?
well, yeah, yeah,
And then you add
definitely.
drugs and alcohol and there's an expression that money, success, as well as failure are amplifiers. And the same thing could be said regarding drugs and alcohol. I look at, and I even wrote to you about this. I look at somebody like Elon Musk, and it's not, drugs and alcohol just don't affect one socioeconomic class. I mean, Elon Musk is said to have gone on stage being on 4 different types of drugs. And so,
Okay.
yeah. So I mean, I'm curious if you would walk the listener and the viewer through how did you then begin to find healing, recovery, and the commitment to finding peace? Because it wasn't just like you went to one um, recovery or rehabilitation home and it was like you walked out and you're like, all right, I'm done now. Nope.
And
You
that's
went
yeah.
back in.
Some people
You
do
got,
that. Yeah.
what's that?
I wasn't that person.
You're right, right. That's
And
why I was reading chapter after chapter in the book, and I am just was I'm like, wow. So what finally worked?
there's a good friend of mine that says, "What gets you into the rooms is a well-whooped butt," but he uses a different term. Um, I finally on September 22nd, 2004. So let's just catch up real quick. I'm gonna do a real quick version. So I go to college, I get out of college, and my graduation present is my first treatment center. I go to treatment, I stay sober for 2 or 3 years. And you got to understand something. When I clean up, I look good, I talk good, I act well,
Hmm.
okay? And I'm competent and capable. So I started working corporate back in 1985. I'm making $50,000 a year, which is great, for a 23-year-old in 1984. And I got it all going. And so I have this, but I'm still damaged. But I don't know I'm damaged. Okay.
Okay.
But I am. And deal with the shooting. And that didn't make me drink or drug. But one day I'm on vacation in Hawaii, and this gentleman says, "Hey, you want a blue Hawaiian? I'm going to get you a blue Hawaiian." And I said, "Well, maybe I'm not an alcoholic." Because what I thought is if I put everything in place, if
Hmm.
I wear the Hickey Freeman suits, if I have the corporate job, if I got the Allen Edmonds wingtip shoes on, I'm not an alcoholic. Because what I'm thinking is if I get all my ducks in a row, I won't have the problems of being an alcoholic. But again, because I have the inability to control how much, I drink to excess. I drink volume. I drink a great volume. Then that alcohol or drug allows me to look at the world differently, and I'll make decisions based on the alcoholic mind.
Hmm.
And I make bad decisions. I mean, bad. And so I go back into my addiction. This was 1988. And within 6 months to a year, I am literally homeless on the streets. So we can go from literally 87, 88 to 2007. I'm either homeless, in treatment. I did 14 inpatient treatment centers, or I'm incarcerated 3 times in prison,
Hmm.
many times in jail. I don't even count jail. So that's the story of that 20-year period is it's the streets and the penitentiary. Finally, on September 22nd, I'm going to commit suicide. I've tried it before, but I'm going to probably be successful this time. But I said, I'll give one more call to my mother, asking her for help. I'm not allowed in my mother's home because I burglarized my mother's home. I stole from my mother. Okay, one of the most shame-based things that I could have ever done and did. But she took my call and she said, "Kenneth, I will get you a one-way ticket to Seattle. I'm in Reno, Nevada, so I can go back into the Seattle Gospel Mission free drug program one more time, number 14." And I said, okay. And I remember going out there to sell a $10 rock of crack cocaine. So I had money for the bus. That's the only reason I did it. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm a
Hmm.
drug addict.
Hmm.
And I got arrested. And it was one of the greatest moments of my life, one of the most important and pivotal moments of my life, because I'm sitting there crying, handcuffed, waiting for the paddy wagon with a smile. And the cop is worried because he's wondering why I'm crying. And I said, because I'm going to live, because I'm going to live.
Hmm.
I can do prison. I've been there twice before. I can't do me on the streets. You guys are going to provide room and board for free. All I got to do is give an exchange of my time, which was going to be the next 3 years.
Hmm.
And in return, I have an opportunity to make some changes.
Hmm.
And then I made a decision about a month and a half into jail before going to the penitentiary that I was going to do something different. And so, we're talking on the road of recovery. So, what did you do different? I walked into Northern Nevada Correctional Center for the third time. And I said to myself, if I am the same person coming out, and I will get out one day, as I am going in, I will have the same results. So I don't sometimes wonder that is from God. I don't know where that amount of sanity came from. Because
Hmm.
I'm still coming off the drugs and the streets, and I'm hanging out with people I know from the streets and the jail.
Can I
And so
interrupt you? Can I
go ahead.
interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
I just
course.
wanted to say that I think that you have the capability to change the world with your knowledge because your story, um, is so parallel to many people like you.
Hmm.
You know, if somebody thinks they can get away with something, whether it's cocaine or alcohol or whatever it is, I've never used drugs, so
Hmm.
I can't necessarily relate. But having said that, all of us know that we leave it all here. It's not like, you know, it's very humbling, like what you had said. You're on that street, and if you had decided to continue and execute that suicide, yeah, I think that that was, but I also think, as I shared with you in the preamble, that you're brilliant. You've got outstanding vocabulary and special knowledge. Like I really think you've got a God gift, and God, time and again, because you stood around murderers. Like I think there was a chapter of
Oh yeah.
you being like in Oakland around like speedballs, and even in, I think it was Mississippi, and realizing
Mhm.
that you were outside of your landscape and your baseline of, in terms of comfort, you were the outsider then. But and I want you to continue in a moment, but
Yeah.
I think that God shined a light on you, but you also wised up eventually. I mean, because in that 20-year window, I mean, you had modeling opportunities. You could have been on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I think you had worked as a salesperson for Xerox and a
Hmm.
number of other Fortune 100 and 500 companies.
Hmm.
And I kept wondering, how does he keep getting hired if he's got a felony record? But people just, I mean, they opened doors for you. There were so many pastors that tossed you keys to empty apartments, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, and they're like, "We trust you, Ken." I mean, God just kept opening door after door after door. I mean, I don't know if you felt that same way during those 20 years.
Yes. So you got to understand again, I present well. And not only that, I use my intelligence to minimize the harm of my behavior.
How lucky you are. Not everyone has that God gift or that gift.
Right. Well, it's this was a street gift. Yeah, believe me, on the streets, this is something people sometimes misunderstand. The streets and the penitentiary are two of the realest places in the world,
Hmm.
especially the penitentiary. Okay. And I
Okay.
can talk to that. But when you're of the streets, you will do what is going to be successful for you to continue that world that you've created. My world was the crack cocaine world.
Hmm.
Okay. That's the predominant thing I did was crack. So I'm going to use every tool within my resources to be able to continue within this addiction. And so there were times where the police would come to arrest people or to do something to this motel room or this rooming house room. And
Hmm.
they thought that I was like the victim. Okay.
Because you presented well
Ah,
and you have a gift for
no
vocabulary.
tats. I have no tats. I don't talk because I can talk street
Hmm.
because again, I had to put that mask on when I'm with them. But believe me, street people, especially real thugs or real hood people,
Hmm.
it wouldn't take them long before they realize, oh, you're not one of us.
Yeah.
Let's
So I
not let
want,
you
I,
stop. Go
yeah, I
ahead.
want to make another point,
Yeah.
and I realize I'm just interrupting you left and right,
No
and I got
problem,
to
no
let you just
problem.
tell your story. Okay, so before you share about the healing,
Right,
and the other point that I wanted
right,
to make to any of the listeners or the viewers out there, because this is, again, this is so common. Like Brene Brown did a whole vulnerability TEDx talk, because North America is one of the most medicated societies. You
right.
know, pick your escape. It doesn't matter if it's prescription meds or illegal drugs. I mean, this is a society today that's going to choose their flavor of escape. The point that I wanted to bring up, and I think they even showed this in the HBO series of Succession, because there were one of the sons who was, I think he was addicted to something. I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was crack. I don't remember. But the point that you made that I thought was very, um, that was a really good point to make, because a lot of people don't know this. You made the point that when somebody is in and they're living on the streets, they understand a world that surrounds all of us that most of us are blind to. So we're just driving to work and back, and we're going to the grocery store, and we got these blinders, and we can't see if we look across the way and someone else is using marijuana or they're using whatever that thing is. Yeah, you're nodding. And I want you to speak on this just for a brief moment, because that's a level of eyesight in a very wild world that's around all of us. So you could, you're like, we're letting all the secrets out here, Kenneth, okay? Because your
Yeah.
book talked about, like, yeah, you were like a pimp to underage girls, and you even, like, sold your body to that one sugar daddy who was a male to help fund your addiction. And I'm thinking, but it's all around everyone. Like it's at sporting games, it's at, all of these events, and a part of, I think, and you chose to have the courage to do that, to open up all the doors to that room in that house as that metaphor. Okay, most people, they don't want to look, So they don't look, and they got family members or they got work associates, they got friends, etc., that are addicted, and it's too complex, and so they never open up the doors, and so all those people don't get saved. And here you are giving voice to it, and I believe it will save someone. What say you about that world that surrounds all of us?
Well, that's there's a couple components. Number one, when you're in that world, especially for a length of time, I did 20 years in that world. And what I have is I have the power of observation. And then I also have the power of articulation. So I can see things and then I can express them either verbally or in writing to others.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of people who see it, but they can't articulate it. Okay. They just don't have that skill set or want to do that.
Hmm.
So there's a couple of things. One, I can look at the street and I can say, oh, she's tricking.
Hmm.
Oh, he's looking for dope. Oh,
Hmm.
they're curb serving. They're
Hmm.
serving dope. I
Hmm.
can go to different countries and can look at young men. That's what I'm looking for. It's always younger men
Hmm.
and looking at their behavior. Oh, we don't want to hang out in this neighborhood in Colombia, or we don't in Ecuador, or wherever we are, or
Hmm.
Dominican Republic,
Hmm.
because I sort of I can see this. I have a sense, observation of many years being around that world. So that's number one. Number two, and this is an important one, I want the audience to hear. Just because of the way a person carries themselves or you see them, I know what they do behind closed doors.
Do you think that's an
Okay,
intuitive sense or just experience?
experience.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
most people can't pick it up. How do I
Hmm.
know that? Because when the pastor gets arrested for XYZ behavior, you're all so surprised. Okay, you're all so surprised because you couldn't pick that up.
Hmm.
We are good. 99% of people who meet me would never think I'm a three-time convicted felon.
Hmm.
They would never think that I used to be a pimp, that I was an armed robber, that I did a kidnapping. They would never think that.
Hmm.
Never. Because they can't pick that up as an intuitive. No, it isn't. Okay. So again, and then so when I'm never surprised about behavior, especially about a man's behavior.
Hmm.
Because again, I'm a lot of what I deal with and talk to are men. Okay, it's not like I stay in my lane, but I know men really well. But
Hmm.
then again, there's another world that I know very well, which is the world of prostitution. I know
Hmm.
that world because I've
Hmm.
talked to probably 50, 60, 100 prostitutes in my
Hmm.
journeys because I
Hmm.
was friends to them. I was a little different. I was friendly with them. And I would talk to them, and at least 90% of the ones I knew had kids. And we
Hmm.
would talk about children, their mothers that are out there doing what they do for whatever reasons they're doing it, but they're number one, they're mothers. And we
Well, I
would
think
sit,
you saw the humanity, and I'm going to share a brief story in your book, and then we got to move over to recovery because
yeah.
I know I have a window of time with you today.